Our guest this episode is Michael Foreman. He's an award-winning communications expert, veteran networking strategist, and author of Networking Unleashed. As a dynamic corporate speaker and workshop leader, Michael helps professionals master the art of genuine connection to build trust and increase profitability. His motto is if they know you, like you, and trust you, they will do business with you. And that has resonated with his audiences at conferences, trade shows, and business events nationwide. He's been featured in publications like CEO Weekly and New York Weekly, and Michael equips professionals with actionable strategies to refine their networking skills and cultivate executive presence. Please welcome to the podcast, Michael Foreman. Welcome, Michael. Welcome to the Engaging Personalities Podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, this is good. So, networking, I feel like for some people, they hear networking and they just like their butt clenches up and they get like, all tight and like, it's, I don't know what it is about it. I mean, some people are good at it, and natural, I suppose. And some people, need help. What is it about networking that people are afraid of? What do you find when you're out there working with people?
It's very simple. The trick to networking, to proper networking, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't do something because you have to do it. You have to just be yourself, be present, and go with the flow, go with the conversation. Networking is a skill, it's an art, and you have to practice, practice, practice to get good at it. But once you get good at it, you become very comfortable and you can talk about anything.
Yeah, the confidence that must give someone, right? To be able
Sure.
to, well, first of all, you're not trying to be anyone else. So everyone's really good at being themselves, but I think sometimes they have to give themselves permission to do that, right? There's that kind of
Right.
hump to get over, right? What are some of the biggest, challenges or maybe it's, what are the things that get in people's way? Like one, they're not being themselves. You've kind of addressed that. Are there other things that are holding people back when they, are in a position where they need to network to build their business?
Sure. Well, you know what? This is easy because when you begin to network, don't look to sell something, don't look to sell your services, your construct, anything like that. Look to give, not receive. Okay, so when you're going and trying to network, and there's a whole secret sauce about approaching the person, about speaking with the person, but really what you're trying to do is get them comfortable enough to break that wall down a little bit and build the trust factor up, because that's the most important. Now, you said in the beginning, I like to say that if they know you, if they like you, if they trust you, they'll do business with you. So if they know you, well, of course they're going to know you. They know your face. But if they like you, well, that narrows the scope down a little bit. But then you have to get over that trust factor. And that's the main thing because nobody's going to do business with you unless they have that trust factor. So
Mhm.
that's where it all begins.
Yeah. And I like the idea that, focusing on the other person and giving. And I think for people who are maybe not extroverted, maybe not, they're going to feel awkward in that situation. Taking that, what am I doing? How should I stand? How should I approach this person? Like all that like mental in your head kind of stuff. When you focus on, giving or serving that person in the conversation, I think it kind of takes some of the nerves out of it. Is that something that you find or talk about in your work?
Well, it does, but that's why I say practice, 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 because nobody walks into somewhere, anywhere that they've never heard of before. They don't know anybody and automatically don't have those nerves and
Yeah.
don't worry about what they're going to say. So after, there's like I said, there's a secret sauce, so to speak, when you're approaching a networking event. Let me walk you through, if you don't mind. I'm going to walk you through going into a networking event. Before the networking event, do your homework, see what kind of tables there are and things that you want to go address and visit and everything else, and keep them aside. When you walk into that room, let's say 300 people, and you find different tables, let's say 4 or 5 people, you usually have that sense of fear, that oh my God, what did I do? And that I'm really talking about the introverts as opposed to the extroverts. The extroverts, listen, like you, like myself, we'll just go out there. I'll talk. It doesn't make a difference because that's just the way that I am. Introverts is a little different. I'll get to that later on. But you walk up to a table, and here's the trick: don't say a word, not one word. You listen. You listen for the conversation. Is this a conversation that you want to be a part of? If it is, great. If not, you haven't said anything yet. So you nicely bow out and you go to the next table. So let's say, now remember, you are the expert in your field. You're going there to solve whatever problems these people have. You listen for the conversation. It's a conversation you like, you want to be a part of. The conversation comes around to you, and you say whatever it is that you have to say. So now, out of the 4 or 5 people, you just have 2 responses, and that's all you really wanted was to get a response. And you're kind of readdressing yourself to those 2 people. So you walk up to the first person, and I use something called FORM, FORM, family, occupation, recreation, and a message. And I keep that in mind when I'm about to talk to them. So I'm going to say, Anders, you married? Oh, that's great. Your wife, your son, your daughter, whatever. Oh, your son, does he play Little League? Oh, that's great. What position does he play? You know, I'm 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 letting you talk about yourself. You talk and talk because you know what? People love to talk about themselves. And they'll talk for hours. You don't let them, of course, but you let them talk because what is that doing? That's bringing that wall down and bringing that trust factor up.
Mhm.
And you let them talk for a few minutes and you say, you know something? I like what you do. I like how you do it. How can I make you more successful? How can I be the best referral source for you? That usually blows them away. And they tell you, and they say, well, by the way, what do you do?
Yeah.
So then you can tell them and you exchange business cards. Now, here's the key. You know that business card he just gave you? On the back of the business card, write down the date, the name of the function, and something you spoke about, because that will help you later on when you follow up. Now,
Yeah.
I used to, when I was in the mortgage industry, I went to 1,000 networking events, and I used to come home with a shoebox full of business cards and say, this, oh my God, look how good I did. I didn't. That was the worst thing I could have done. I really believe that after a 3 or 4 hour event, you should come back with maybe 15 or 20 business cards, because that means that you connected with these people, that you are creating a relationship with these people, and that you have more to follow up with. I truly feel that the days of building a customer list is gone. Ever since the pandemic, people got stupid. They rely on their cell phones, on Zoom and everything else. They lost that whole opportunity to network and communicate with one another.
Mhm.
So that will give you your chance to follow. And I have a secret sauce for follow up also. And if you follow up really with what I say, you have a 90% chance of getting a better response.
Interesting. So, I mean, I like the idea of making notes on the card, you know, put those notes perhaps into your CRM, right? So that you have, that
That
kind of
comes afterwards.
context. You can come back to it, that sort of thing. And I like the idea of not going for numbers, not going for quantity, but going for quality of interactions, right? And trying to
Absolutely.
go a little deeper with those people that you do exchange cards with, because hopefully they remember you down the road and that sort of thing, as opposed to just basically a cursory kind of interaction that would just be not memorable, be forgotten, totally forgotten. It's interesting. Now you mentioned Zoom, the pandemic, and I'm just wondering, how are people, how has networking changed over the years in terms of whether it is technology, techniques, tactics, that sort of thing, or I mean, the principles probably have remained the same. But I want your opinion on how have things changed.
Well, networking as a whole hasn't changed at all. It's expanded because of technology. I when I do a virtual workshop, I have 30 people in a room on screen. So I'm interacting with those people. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I go to networking events, networking meetings, and I have this one-on-one that I crave almost, because you need to feel the vibe of the person. You need to feel the vibe of the room. I've walked into networking events and I've got, oh my God, this is a horrible vibe. This is not for me. This networking group, this is not for me. And I, did what I had to do and I left. I've had that with a one-on-one, and I knew that from the first 3 minutes that I will have this meeting with this person and I will not take it any further. But you can't get that vibe, so to speak, over the over Zoom or over a text.
Mhm.
And that's where it's really changed. It's really expanded. It hasn't really changed.
So now I got a question for you, because sometimes you are maybe working in well, our business is very similar to this in the way that no one in my city is really in the market for what we do. We're all working with companies all over the place. And so, if you're in a position like that, is virtual networking kind of the main way to do that? And how does one go about that? Are there groups that people pop in on, or I'm not familiar myself. So what have you seen out there?
Well, what I've seen was locally, you do the traditional networking.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you want to expand your reach, you know, I've been on 3 or 4 networking calls this week already. And one was in Ontario, one was in Australia, one was California. And we wouldn't be able to network like that unless we had this technology.
Mhm.
So there is a place for it. You can talk to anybody throughout the entire world and be like you're right there with them. And we talked about referrals and how important referrals are to the person who's networking. And that's great, but you still don't get that sense of truly networking unless you're there.
Mhm.
But you can network with anybody over Zoom.
You know what? And this reminds me a lot of the challenges. Just when people when the pandemic hit, we created a training and we did a lot of coaching and live virtual trainings on virtual engagement. Right, trying to make it more interesting for people to watch so that they hear your message. And then you can, whether you're selling or you're speaking or whatever you're doing, to try to get that message across. And it's the same darn challenge with networking, is that you can't read all the body language. You can't breathe the same air. You can't, there's all those limitations that it doesn't build the trust like, in person. And I've even seen some, studies on when you use a virtual background, it doesn't build as much trust as not, and different, like, just because we can kind of hide behind things, right, virtually. And again, that probably is one of those things that hurts that. Yeah.
And so I use my background to really show everything that I do. Okay,
Right, to build
so
authority, which I think is great, right?
that's
And
right. But
yeah.
having a natural setting behind me, I think that is so much more important than having this billboard behind me. I need to have it because I need to show everybody what I do. But if I was just talking to you one on one, I can just have the window with the trees and the grass and everything else. It's a little cold outside for that right now, but even still, you know, it's a different concept, but it's all the same when you build the trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you wrote a book on networking, and it's Networking Unleashed: Mastering the Art of Networking. What are a couple of tips that people might find without giving away too much? Of course, we want people to buy the book, but what are some of the tips or things that you discuss in the book that you might be able to share with our audience here today?
Well, I'll tell you, I made an unabridged version of the book, right? And I placed it on my website as a PDF, and that's free for anybody to download.
You
Okay.
want to do
So
you want to share that URL with us right now while we're
it,
while we're talking?
michaelaforman.com.
Oh,
michaelaforman.com. On there, you'll see all my many podcasts. You'll see my book. You'll see I just created a digital course about networking and communication, and you can access it that way also. But I put the PDF on there because they shouldn't have to like, oh, the book is 14.95. I don't want to spend for I don't know. I want to start, but I don't know how to continue. Take all that away. Download the PDF and go. It's free. Just go. The takeaways is really simple. It's how we started. Be yourself. Okay. And if you go into, I don't say go into a large conference or seminar, start small, like a chamber of commerce. If you join your chamber of commerce, that is a weekly meeting that you begin to hone your 30-second elevator speech and interact with people. Then there's the after hours networking events that you go there and you start to work with the people. And when you become familiar with them, it becomes easier. When it becomes easier, you become better. It's not so much that it's forced, it's just that you're being yourself.
So much of this, I feel like, and again, when we first started, I said networking. People hear it and they like tense up, kind of thing. It's almost like we've made it into a bit of a thing that's bigger than what it really is, right? If we talked about it like, hey, are you going to go be yourself at this event? Like that's kind of lowers the barrier to entry a little bit, makes people maybe feel a bit more comfortable. But you're right, the practice, just getting used to it. But I think there's that hump of the discipline to be able to do that, right? Just getting out there. But chamber, there you go, weekly. You could have 52 practices per year on doing it that way.
52 plus,
Yeah.
because they usually have after hours meetings, they have ribbon cuttings, they have everything is a source of networking.
Mhm.
And there's places online that you can go, meetup.com, let's say, about local networking meetings and groups that you could just go to, and it's usually free.
Mhm.
So you just
Mhm.
go. I don't mean like no. There's something called a BNI for
Yeah.
business networking. That costs money, and you do something every week, and it's referrals and everything. That's your next level. But for somebody that just wants to start, now my biggest thing is, listen. You want to network? Begin. Start. Put it on your calendar. Every other week, go to a different networking event, go to a different
Mhm.
networking meeting. Just start. And the first time you go out, you're going to suck. It's going to be horrible. You're going to be bad. But the next time you go out, it'll be a little bit better. The next time you go out, it'll be a little bit better. And then by the fourth, fifth, sixth time, you're like, What was I afraid of? This is easy.
Yeah.
You're going out, and when you're giving instead of receiving, when you're right, when you're giving instead of receiving, you'll see that things become a lot easier.
Do you ever recommend using, and maybe this is a hack or something along those lines, of giving gifts to people, whether it's promotional items and that sort of thing, because you talked about giving to that other person. Is gift giving something that you talk about or recommend?
Okay. When I was in the mortgage industry, okay, I was in a county in New York, about 3,000 people, 300,000 people. There were about 3,000 realtors, and only 1% of them really did the business.
Hmm.
And I wanted to get in on that business. So I took the most biggest, wealthiest realtor that I can find. And I knew her personally, but she didn't know me through mortgages. And I sent her a shot glass. I said, Margot, just give me a shot. That's all I
Ah,
ask. And she laughed so hard. She called me up. She said, Michael, I can't believe you did that. That was great. Listen, I have my three mortgage guys, but as soon as one falters, you're in. And that's what I was looking for.
yeah.
Another time, these were expensive gifts now. I gave a football and I said, don't pass on me, just give me a shot. And again, they laughed, they appreciated the gift. They said, as soon as one falters, you'll get in. So, in that sense, I say, yes, it's worth doing those small promotional pieces. I had my name on everything, my picture on everything. And that's really not for getting business, but that's for branding.
And
So that
follow
people
up,
are
it
just,
sounds like too, right? Just that, like you're sending them something in the mail or having something sent to their office,
it
couriered or
keeps
something.
you top of mind. It keeps
Yeah,
you in the front of the pack.
yeah.
And that's all you really want.
Yeah, I was at a trade show last spring, and a guy came up to me, and I was actually we were just kind of walking around, and a guy held out his hands like this with his fists, with the closed fists to me. And he says, "Pick a hand," and I tapped one of his hands. He opens it up, and there was a little um, wooden disc printed on it, and basically what it was trying to say is, "I appreciate you." But it was all ran together in one word, and it's just appreciate you. Like that's, and so he gave it to me, and he goes, "Hi, I print these up or whatever. I make these at home. There's a little thing for you." And so for him, and this is actually networking, right? This is actually at the live event. He has these tiny little discs, and it's a stupid little little thing. And there was one in each hand, so it didn't really matter. But it's just the idea that it made me feel like I had a choice, and I engaged with it. But you get to keep it, and then you could use it with someone else if you wanted. So it was almost like a little viral gift that I think helped bring people together, which is kind of a neat thing that yeah, people could use here too.
Yeah. Well, his whole idea was to stop you and
Yeah,
make you interact with him.
yeah,
And he did it 100%.
yeah.
Okay. So you were able to stop and actually see what he had to offer instead of just walking right past.
Hmm.
When I was in the, again, when I was in the mortgage business, I set up my tables really well. I had a big wheel about giving things away and always had gifts like that. But I had a beautiful girl in a skimpy outfit hand,
Oh, oh,
handing my
Michael.
stuff out. And let me tell you, it worked. It
Back
worked because I
then, back
well
then,
back
I'm
back
cutting
then.
you off just because I mean, we trade shows is where we hang out, and that's just pretty frowned upon nowadays. So,
Yeah,
but
well,
I understand it worked at the time. Yeah.
so you just need something. You need something that's going to attract attention. Right
Yeah.
now, you can take her out and put a clown in her spot, okay, and have the clown and have a mime. And when you have a mime and you have somebody, and it usually stops the person, and they usually stop. And that's all you're trying to do is have them stop and take notice. So that's really the whole gist of the thing. And so regardless of how you get them to stop, you get them to stop. So you can put a clown in there, you can put a guy with a wheel, you could anything you want. But in a trade show, your whole job is to have them stop and just look at your table.
Yeah, and I mean that's our business with what Engagify does is with our infotainers. I probably wouldn't do a clown or a mime. I've seen that not work. Personally, just I would something that has relevance to the message too helps, right? So that it is a performance, something that attracts. But yeah, you're right. You're just trying to get a chance, right, to stop them and to then create that interaction, right? Just to be able to give you if they walk right on by. In networking, one of the things we haven't addressed is that, a lot of people are in the same boat as you when you get there, right? They are also probably feeling awkward, right? They're also maybe unsure of this event or how they're going to do it. And when you approach them, you're taking a lot of pressure off of them to do it, aren't you? Like, is it?
Absolutely. If you make the first move, but that goes back to your confidence.
Yeah.
That goes back to you being you. So if you can be the person to make that first step, that takes away a whole bunch from the other person where they can relax and they can answer your questions instead of asking the questions.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot more out of them. So
Mhm.
it works out so that if you can go to these smaller meetings, smaller conferences, and build your confidence so that you can walk up to a table, don't talk, listen, but that also you have to be confident in order to do that because a nervous person when they first walk up start talking
Yeah.
because they're so nervous. So you have to kind of take that away a little bit.
I really like that tip of listening in because it may be why do you want to get why do you want to jump into this conversation, right? Like, let's first find that out. It does remind me a lot of when I used to do a lot of what they call walk around or close up magic, as a performer. And so you'd be working these cocktail hours and networking events, and you'd be going group to group. But the problem is you had to break into that conversation to then introduce yourself, and it's a tricky thing to do because you don't want to interrupt, but you do want to somehow, like, you're hired to entertain, and if no one's watching, then you're not going to get paid, right? In that case. So one of the interrupting or disruptors I would use is I would say, hey, sorry to interrupt everyone. Can you just remember your topic? And then when I leave, you can just get right back in that conversation. Is that cool? And it was like this kind of quirky, thing to say, and it would get a laugh, and then I would be able to take over, right? And if they did remind me of the conversation when I left, I'd be like, "You were talking about this," and then back out. And so that was kind of fun. But again, that's pretty. It does take confidence to do that, right? And listening, I think, is so much more of an easier way to get there. And if they're aware, they're gonna probably invite you in, right?
Right. And but more important than listening is right after that. It's the pause.
Mm,
You listen and you let them finish what they're saying. You have that pause, that silence right afterwards, because that tells the other person you were listening to them. And when
yeah,
you respond to what they were saying, not the next thing that you wanted to say, but what they were talking about, that gives them the feeling that you paid attention,
yeah.
that you have all this attention, and you're listening.
And it shows respect and that you valued what they were sharing. Yeah. So
Yes,
much good
absolutely,
stuff there.
absolutely.
This has been great, Michael. And it's been a long time since I've actually done a real networking event. You kind of got me pumped to go to something right now.
Good,
Uh,
good. I'm
yeah.
glad.
Good. Where can people? I know we've already talked about your website, michaelaforman.com. What where else can people reach out to you if they want to connect?
Well, typical LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. But if you want to know what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, go to my website. There's a contact form on there. You fill out the contact form, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. But on there is everything that I do, my digital course, the book, the part of the Speakers Bureau that I'm part of, Speakers Lab that taught me all this about speaking, um, the podcast, everything. It's fun. I
That's
have a
cool.
blog on there, I have podcasts on there. It's all fun.
Lots of good tools and resources on the website. I've been there, so do check it out. So, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your expertise with our audience.
Anders, this was great. You're a great host, and I really appreciate you letting me talk.
All right. Well, thanks again for being here. And to all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in once again. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged. Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement and you're an industry leader or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engagify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and stay engaged.